Beneath the endless stars of the Ice Age sky, early humans huddled together in firelit caves. Outside, winds howled across frozen plains, but within those stone walls, warmth and rhythm shaped nights of sleep unlike any we know today. Welcome, dear listener. Tonight let's step quietly into the distant past, where dreams once drifted through the cold silence of prehistoric winters. If you haven't already, you can dim the lights, let the hum of a fan or the stillness of night surround you, and settle deeper into bed. If you enjoy these gentle journeys through history, feel free, but only if it feels right, to like this video and subscribe. And I'd love to know, softly in the comments, where you're tuning in from and what time it is as you listen. It makes our little circle of night listeners feel closer, as if we're all gathered together. So, as your breathing slows and your thoughts grow quiet, let's begin tonight's story. Long before villages, wooden huts, or even the simplest tents, humans lived at the mercy of the elements. This was the Paleolithic world, stretching back tens of thousands of years, an age when winters were colder and longer than most of us today can imagine. Great ice sheets crept over the northern lands, forests thinned into frozen plains, and rivers, solid under thick ice, became silent. In such an unforgiving landscape, survival was not certain. For every family or tribe, the change of seasons was a gamble between life and death. And when winter came, the need for shelter was greater than ever. It was in this constant struggle for warmth that caves revealed their importance. To us, they may appear as mere hollows in stone, but to our ancestors, they were natural sanctuaries. Carved by water, shaped by time, and hidden in cliffsides or hills, caves offered something no open field or forest could: protection. The rock itself formed walls against the wind, a ceiling against snow, and a barrier against predators who prowled the icy nights. Imagine a small group of early humans making their way through snow at dusk. Their breath forms clouds in the freezing air, and their furs are stiff with frost. The ground crunches underfoot, each step heavier as hunger and cold take their toll. Then, through the pale light, they spot it, a dark opening in the stone face of a hill. At first glance it is just a shadow, but as they approach, the mouth of a cave reveals itself. To step inside is to cross a threshold. The sharp wind ceases. The air is still, heavy with the smell of damp stone. It is not warm, yet it is steady. Compared to the brutal cold outside, it feels almost merciful. What made caves particularly valuable was their stability. The world outside swung violently between freezing winds and sudden storms, but inside the temperature shifted little. The earth, thick and unmoving, created an environment far less cruel. Even in the depths of winter, a cave would hold a tolerable chill, never dropping as sharply as the open night. To people without houses or permanent walls, this steadiness was nothing short of miraculous. Soon caves became more than places to rest. They became winter homes. Fires lit against their walls brought warmth and light. Families huddled together, finding not only shelter but a place where community could survive the long season. And though these caves were dark and rough, they offered the one thing our ancestors needed most: safety enough to sleep. Once early humans discovered the safety of caves, they began to adapt them to their needs. A cave was never simply entered and left as it was. It was shaped into a home. The process was slow, simple, and often dictated by necessity, but it marked the beginning of human ingenuity in turning the raw natural world into something livable. The very first task inside a cave was to secure fire. Without fire, the cave was nothing more than a cold tomb. Flames transformed the space. They provided warmth, light, and safety. But building a fire inside a cave was not easy. Smoke needed to escape, or else the air would grow suffocating. Some caves had natural openings or cracks in the rock that acted as vents. Others required fires to be placed near the mouth where the wind could draw the smoke outward. Over time, groups learned where to set their flames so that the balance was just right. Heat, filling the interior without choking the inhabitants. Once the fire was steady, the cave took on the glow of a hearth. Shadows flickered against the walls, turning rough stone into a living canvas. Around this fire, people began to arrange their lives. Animal skins were spread on the ground to soften the hard rock. Moss, dry grasses, and furs were laid in layers to create bedding. Over weeks, the cave floor became a patchwork of sleeping places, work areas, and storage corners where bones, tools and food could be kept. Caves also allowed for something rare in the wild: privacy. While the world outside was vast and exposed, the inside of a cave was contained. Families could stay close together, sharing warmth and resources. In larger caves, several families might share the same space, each claiming a portion of the interior. This communal living meant protection was stronger, and the burdens of survival, gathering wood, hunting, tending to the fire, could be shared. Still, life in a cave was not without risks. Darkness hid dangers. A bear or a wolf might already have claimed the hollow before humans entered. Signs of scratching or old bones near the entrance were warnings. If ignored, they could mean disaster. Early people learned to read these signals, choosing carefully which caves to settle in. Once claimed, the cave became theirs for the season, defended fiercely against both animals and rival groups. In winter, when snow sealed the land and food was scarce, the cave became the centre of existence. Outside journeys were dangerous and brief, but within the stone walls there was the chance to rest. Here, the rhythm of survival slowed. Fires crackled, children slept huddled beneath furs, and stories, half myth, half memory, echoed across the stone, filling the long nights with something more than silence. Over generations, caves became more than just shelters. They became symbols of survival. They held within their walls the memory of countless winters, each one endured by the glow of fire and the strength of community. Archaeologists today can still trace the stories of these early winters, written in ash layers, discarded bones, and faint carvings on the stone walls. One of the most remarkable aspects of caves was their ability to preserve. A fire pit left behind hundreds of years ago might still be visible, blackened against the rock. Animal bones scattered in corners tell us what was eaten: reindeer, bison, mammoth, fish. Even traces of berries and roots have been found, showing that survival depended on more than hunting alone. These remains are a record of how early humans adapted not just to live, but to organise life through the harshest seasons. Caves also gave birth to something entirely new: the human imagination. With time on their hands during long winter nights, people began to leave marks on the stone walls. At first, these may have been simple scratches or symbols to pass time, but soon they grew into vivid paintings of animals, hunts, and spirits. The famous cave paintings in Lascaux and Chauvet are echoes of this creativity. It is possible that the very act of enduring winter inside stone chambers encouraged humans to dream, to tell stories, and to imagine worlds beyond the snow and ice pressing at the entrance. But survival in caves also required constant awareness. Firewood had to be gathered whenever possible, food supplies stretched, and the entrance guarded. A cave was both protection and a trap. It kept out the wind, but if enemies or wild beasts attacked, escape routes were limited. For this reason, many groups did not stay in the deepest, darkest parts of a cave. Instead, they lived closer to the mouth, where they could see the world outside and react quickly if danger came. Despite the hardships, caves gave humans one priceless gift: consistent sleep. In a frozen wilderness, lying under open skies meant shivering through the night or waking at every rustle of danger. Inside stone, the wind was silenced, the snow kept at bay, and the fire's warmth created a bubble of comfort. Families could rest deeply, children could grow, and elders could pass on their wisdom in stories told before the flames. Sleep, often overlooked in survival, was what gave people the strength to face each day of winter. To understand how early humans survived, we first need to step back into the world of the Ice Age. This was not just a time of cold weather, it was a world utterly shaped by ice and snow. Vast glaciers stretched across continents, sometimes hundreds of meters thick. They carved valleys, blocked rivers, and created landscapes that were both breathtaking and brutal. For early humans, especially those living in Europe and Northern Asia, winter was not just a season. It was a constant shadow, lingering for months, demanding resilience. The cold was relentless. Temperatures often dropped far below freezing, and unlike today, there were no warm coats stitched from factories or heated homes. Survival depended entirely on what people could find and craft with their own hands. Animal hides became clothing, stitched together with bone needles and sinew threads. Fires were essential, not just for warmth, but for life itself. Without fire, a person could not survive more than a few hours in the deep snowfields of Ice Age Europe. But even fire was a fragile thing. It required fuel, wood, dried grass, sometimes even animal dung when forests grew sparse. In winter, when snow buried everything, gathering enough fuel became one of the greatest challenges. Families had to plan carefully, storing piles of wood or dragging branches back from long hunting trips. A dying fire could mean death by morning. Food, too, became scarce in these endless winters. Herds of mammoth, bison and reindeer were constantly on the move, migrating toward areas with less snow. Hunters had to track them across dangerous frozen landscapes, often risking their lives against both the cold and the animals themselves. A failed hunt could leave a family starving. Sometimes, caches of dried meat, smoked fish, or marrow-filled bones were buried beneath the snow as emergency supplies. These hidden stores could mean the difference between life and death when storms cut people off from the outside world. The snowstorms themselves were terrifying. Imagine endless white, wind howling like a beast, burying paths and landmarks within minutes. Early humans often huddled inside caves or makeshift shelters during these storms, listening to the roar outside while hoping their fires would last. Those caught in the open faced frostbite, blindness from the snow glare, and exhaustion. Children and elders were especially vulnerable, and entire groups could be lost if a blizzard struck unprepared. Yet, despite this brutality, the Ice Age shaped humans into remarkable survivors. The very harshness of winter taught them how to cooperate, to share resources and to innovate. Families and tribes drew closer together, relying on one another for food, warmth and protection. Winter nights were long, stretching for hours of darkness. In those hours, humans learned the power of story, song and ritual to keep hope alive. Around the fire, they not only endured but found meaning. The Ice Age winters were unforgiving, but they were also the crucible in which human resilience was forged. These cold months demanded every ounce of resourcefulness. In the silence of frozen nights and beneath the shadow of glaciers, humans became stronger, more united and more inventive. The struggle was immense, but it was this very struggle that laid the foundations for survival in all the centuries to come. For early humans, surviving the Ice Age was not only about braving the cold, it was about managing everything that came with it. Food became scarce long before the first deep snow even touched the ground. Herds of animals that once roamed freely began to migrate south, chasing warmer lands. The fruits, roots, and plants that people once gathered disappeared beneath layers of frost. Each winter brought the same pressing question: how will we eat, and how will we last until spring? Communities adapted with extraordinary patience. During the brief summers, they worked tirelessly to prepare for the darker months ahead. Meat was dried and smoked over open fires, wrapped in hides to preserve it for weeks or even months. Bones were cracked open to reach the marrow inside, a rich source of energy when everything else failed. Women and children gathered nuts and seeds, storing them in woven baskets, sometimes burying them underground, where the earth itself served as a refrigerator. Every bit of effort was a safeguard against the long, silent hunger that winter carried. But hunger was not the only challenge. The cold itself was merciless. Fire was a companion, but it was also fragile. Keeping a flame alive required constant attention. If the fire went out in the middle of a stormy night, reigniting it was no simple matter. Early humans learned to guard their fires carefully, carrying embers wrapped in ash or animal dung when moving from place to place. These glowing fragments of heat were more precious than gold, because without them, survival grew nearly impossible. The nights were especially hard. As the sun set early and the dark stretched endlessly, people huddled together for warmth. Their breath turned into faint mist in the chill air, and every sound, the crack of ice, the howl of distant animals, felt sharper, more threatening. To sleep was to take a risk, but exhaustion eventually pulled everyone into slumber. Even then, rest was uneasy. Many likely woke through the night, adjusting their position near the fire, or checking that the children were covered with skins and furs. Winter, in these times, was more than a season. It was a constant test. The bitter cold, the thin food supplies, the darkness that seemed to have no end. All these hardships shaped the rhythm of human life. Yet, in enduring these struggles, people found new strength. They became watchful, inventive, and deeply reliant on one another. And in this unyielding environment, the seeds of human resilience quietly took root. The Ice Age did more than freeze rivers and bury valleys beneath glaciers. It reshaped the very nature of human life. In the heart of winter, survival meant more than finding food or keeping warm. It demanded cooperation, planning, and a resilience that no other creature on Earth could match. Where animals relied purely on instinct, humans relied on community, memory, and imagination. Around the fire, stories became as essential as meat and marrow. Elders shared memories of past winters, reminding everyone that hardship was not endless, that the sun would return, and the herds would once again cross the plains. These tales were not mere entertainment, they were survival tools. They carried knowledge, where to find hidden springs that didn't freeze, how to track animals in snow, which plants revived quickly after frost. In the long hours of darkness, these words gave comfort and direction, binding people together as tightly as the hides that wrapped their bodies. Children grew up within this rhythm, learning patience and endurance from their families. They were taught to scrape hides, to twist sinew into rope, to spark fire from flint, and to wait in silence while hunters listened for distant movement in the snow. Every task, no matter how small, became part of a chain of survival. In this way, winter was also a teacher, harsh and unforgiving, yet full of lessons that shaped the generations to come. The cold also gave rise to rituals of protection. Some groups buried food offerings in the snow, asking unseen spirits to keep the fire alive through the night. Others carved symbols into bones or painted red ochre on cave walls, believing these acts would guard the community from illness or misfortune. Whether or not these rituals had power, they provided a sense of control in a world where much was uncertain. And slowly, across countless winters, humans transformed. Their bodies grew stronger from constant labour, their minds sharper from endless problem-solving. But perhaps most importantly, they learned the value of togetherness. No one could face the Ice Age alone. A single fire, a single store of food, or a single pair of hands was never enough. Survival came only when many hands worked as one. Thus, the cruelty of winter became its paradoxical gift. Out of the silence and the cold, humans discovered endurance, ingenuity, and unity. What began as struggle became strength, and the lessons of those winters echoed far beyond the Ice Age, carrying forward into every chapter of human history. When we imagine the lives of early humans, we often picture individuals wrapped in furs, each huddled alone against the cold. But survival during the Ice Age and in the millennia that followed was not a solitary act. It was communal, and nowhere was this more visible than in the act of sleeping. Night after night, as the cold pressed in and the fire's glow began to fade, families and entire groups lay close together, their bodies forming a living shield against the winter chill. This instinct was not unique to humans. Animals, too, had always slept in clusters, from wolves in their dens to birds on branches. But for humans, the practice carried deeper meaning. Sleeping together was not just a matter of warmth. It was also a ritual of safety, of trust, and of unity. In a world without thick walls or sealed windows, the human body itself became insulation. Skin against skin, furs shared across shoulders, and limbs overlapping created a pocket of heat that no frost could easily steal. Archaeological evidence from ancient caves suggests that sleeping areas were rarely separated. In places like Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, or painted caves in southern France, hearths are surrounded by depressions in the earth, spaces where multiple people once lay side by side. Burn marks and discarded animal bones reveal that food, fire and rest were all part of the same central space. The family fire was not just for cooking, it was the axis around which every night's survival revolved. The logic was simple but effective. A lone sleeper lost body heat rapidly in the cold, no matter how many hides they wore. But a cluster of 5, 6 or more sleepers could maintain a shared warmth that lasted through the night. Infants and children were nestled in the middle, shielded by parents and elders. Hunters returning exhausted were welcomed into the fold. Even dogs, once domesticated, curled up at the edges, their bodies adding to the shared pool of heat, and their ears tuned to distant sounds in the dark. Yet warmth was only one side of this practice. Sleeping together built intimacy and reinforced social bonds. A group that shared its nights so closely also shared its trust. Each heartbeat, each breath, and each stir in the dark reminded everyone that they were not alone. For early humans, this comfort was as vital as the fire itself. It was reassurance that they belonged to something larger than themselves, and that together they could outlast even the harshest winters. In this way, the simple act of clustering bodies in the night became a cornerstone of survival. It was practical, but it was also deeply human, a mixture of necessity and care, of warmth and companionship. For countless generations, this nightly ritual kept the cold at bay and strengthened the ties that held communities together. The nightly arrangement of clustered sleeping was not random. Like so many survival strategies, it followed patterns shaped by necessity, culture, and instinct. At the heart of the cluster were usually the most vulnerable: infants, toddlers, and sometimes the elderly. These individuals were surrounded by parents and stronger adults, who acted as living barriers against the night's chill. In this layered structure, warmth radiated inward, while the cold was kept at the edges. Anthropologists studying traditional societies that still practice communal sleeping have observed similar patterns. In some Arctic communities, families would sleep under shared coverings made of animal hides, positioning themselves so that no one was left exposed. Children were pressed close to their mothers for both warmth and feeding, while fathers and hunters often formed the outer layer, not only to shield the group from drafts, but also to be ready to rise if danger approached. In Paleolithic shelters and caves, fire added another dimension. A low-burning hearth was often maintained through the night, and those nearest to it rotated to avoid burns or smoke inhalation. Sleeping in clusters made this possible. One person could stir the fire while others remained warm in the shared pile. Even when the flames dimmed, the heat trapped between bodies and hides created a cocoon of relative comfort. Of course, clustering was not without its challenges. Space was limited, and the mix of humans and animals, dogs, sometimes goats or sheep once domesticated, meant nights could be noisy and restless. Snoring, coughing, and shifting positions were constant companions. Illness could spread more easily in such close quarters, and disputes within groups might linger uncomfortably when everyone was pressed together on the same bedding. Yet despite these difficulties, the advantages far outweighed the discomforts. Survival demanded compromise, and the collective warmth of the cluster was too valuable to abandon. There was also an unspoken rhythm to communal sleep. When one stirred, others adjusted. When the fire needed tending, someone at the edge rose quietly. When danger was sensed, the howl of wolves in the distance or the creak of shifting ice, a single body's tension could ripple through the cluster, rousing everyone in seconds. This heightened sensitivity turned the group into an organic alarm system, each person's senses amplifying the others. Perhaps most fascinating is the emotional dimension. Children raised in such environments grew up with an ingrained sense of belonging, their earliest memories shaped by nights enveloped in warmth, surrounded by the breathing bodies of their kin. Trust was built in the dark, when survival depended on shared stillness and shared vigilance. Even disputes of the day seemed softened by the reality of the night, when anger had little place beside the fire. In this way, sleeping clusters were more than a physical necessity. They were a nightly reaffirmation of community, a quiet lesson in cooperation and interdependence. Against the vast loneliness of the Ice Age world, pressed between stone walls and fur coverings, early humans found not only warmth, but also comfort in the company of one another. The practice of clustering together for warmth during the Ice Age was not a fleeting solution. It left a deep imprint on the social fabric of humanity. What began as a simple survival strategy gradually wove itself into culture, ritual, and memory. For countless generations, sleeping side by side was the default state of human life, and its influence can still be felt in traditions around the world. Over time, the cluster became a space of teaching as well as resting. In the glow of the dying fire, elders told stories, passing down myths, hunting wisdom and knowledge of the stars. Children listened drowsily, tucked against their parents, absorbing lessons they would carry into adulthood. The warmth of bodies provided safety, but the warmth of shared words gave meaning. Nights were not only for sleeping, they were for bonding, storytelling, and preserving the continuity of culture. The presence of animals in these sleeping groups further transformed human life. The earliest domesticated dogs, for instance, often nestled close to humans during the night. They provided warmth, but also an added layer of protection, alerting their human companions to sounds in the dark. This nightly intimacy strengthened the bond between species and may have played a role in the extraordinary partnership that has endured for thousands of years. Even as humans developed better shelters, clothing, and tools, the instinct for communal sleeping persisted. Archaeological sites from the Neolithic era show longhouses where entire communities lived and slept under one roof. Privacy was nearly non-existent, but in its place was a profound sense of unity. To modern sensibilities, this closeness might feel suffocating, but to early humans it was the very definition of security. The psychological effects were equally important. Clustering reduced loneliness, soothed fears of the dark, and reminded individuals that they were part of something larger than themselves. In a harsh and unpredictable world, that reassurance could mean the difference between despair and determination. Knowing that others were literally by one's side each night built a resilience that no solitary existence could match. As centuries passed and human societies grew more complex, sleeping arrangements gradually changed. With agriculture, wealth, and architecture came private rooms and individual bedding. Yet the echoes of those early clusters remain. In many cultures, children still sleep beside their parents, or siblings share a bed in early years. Soldiers in wartime trenches, shepherds in mountain huts, and even modern campers instinctively huddle together for warmth and comfort. The Ice Age habit never fully disappeared, it only adapted. In the end, clustering was more than a response to freezing temperatures. It was a nightly act of trust, an embodied reminder that survival was not achieved alone. Those huddled shapes around the fire circle carried humanity through some of its darkest and coldest hours. And though our world has changed, the deep human need for connection, comfort and shared warmth at night has remained unchanged, a timeless inheritance from the distant past. When we think of beds today, we imagine soft mattresses, pillows and blankets. But for early humans, those living through the bitter cold of the Ice Age, the question of where and how to sleep was just as vital as food or fire. The ground itself posed dangers. It was cold, damp and unforgiving. Lying directly on bare earth could drain precious body heat, leading to illness or even death. For survival, early people had to become inventive, finding ways to lift themselves, both literally and figuratively, out of the cold embrace of the soil. Archaeological evidence shows that some of the first beds were nothing more than piles of natural material gathered from the environment. Grasses, reeds and leaves were spread on the cave floor or tucked into shallow depressions in the ground. These plant layers acted as insulation, creating a barrier that kept sleepers away from the frozen floor. In some cases, ashes from old fires were sprinkled beneath the grasses, not only to repel insects but also to add an extra layer of warmth and dryness. Animal skins and furs soon became another essential part of this nightly arrangement. After a hunt, the meat sustained the group while the hides provided bedding. Laid over grasses, furs gave softness and a feeling of security. Wrapped around bodies, they functioned like primitive blankets, trapping warmth close to the skin. In especially harsh regions, such as Ice Age Europe, these furs were the difference between waking up alive or not waking up at all. Stone, too, played an unexpected role. In some sites, archaeologists have uncovered flat slabs used as raised sleeping platforms. Though hard, they offered protection against moisture, pests and crawling creatures. When layered with grasses and covered in skins, these stone beds became surprisingly practical. Some caves show evidence of repeated construction of such sleeping areas, suggesting that the making of a bed had already become part of routine domestic life, tens of thousands of years ago. These first beds were not about comfort in the modern sense. They were about survival. Yet, in their own way, they marked an important shift. By creating dedicated spaces for sleep, early humans were beginning to shape their environments rather than simply endure them. The act of gathering grass, arranging hides, or smoothing stone was more than preparation for rest. It was the start of a nightly ritual, a recognition that sleep deserved its own place. The ingenuity of these early bed makers reveals much about the priorities of the time: food, fire, shelter, and a bed. Even in the most perilous conditions, people sought not just to survive the night, but to find a measure of comfort within it. This search for a warmer, safer, softer place to lie down is one of the oldest human instincts, and it laid the foundation for everything from woven mats to the elaborate bedding of future civilizations. Over time, the first beds of grass, fir, and stone became more than emergency solutions. They grew into crafted sleeping spaces that showed deliberate planning. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence from South Africa dating back over 200,000 years where early humans carefully layered plant materials, sometimes including aromatic leaves that repelled insects. This suggests that bedding was not just practical, but also thoughtfully designed to improve comfort and safety. As Ice Age winters pressed down harder, people refined these techniques. A bare pile of grass soon evolved into thicker layers, sometimes half a foot deep, creating soft cushions against the cold. These grassy mattresses were frequently replaced, showing that communities understood hygiene in a basic sense. Old, damp bedding was discarded, and fresh layers were brought in, a cycle that prevented sickness and kept sleeping areas warmer and cleaner. Fur, too, became more versatile. While hides were first used simply as coverings, soon they were tanned, softened, and sometimes stitched together. A large spread of fur could serve as both mattress and blanket. Families or hunting groups would lie close on shared bedding, conserving heat and building bonds of security. In this way, a bed was never just an individual space. It was communal, reflecting the social nature of early human survival. Stone platforms, though cold at first glance, had their own advantages. In wetter climates, they offered a dry base above ground moisture. In caves with uneven floors, slabs were arranged to form flat surfaces, turning inhospitable rock shelters into livable homes. The act of constructing such spaces demonstrates how humans increasingly shaped nature into something more livable. They were not merely resting in caves, they were engineering them into proper habitats. What is striking is how early these habits formed. Long before agriculture, long before towns and cities, people were already investing time and effort into creating sleep spaces that were separate from cooking fires or tool-making areas. The bed became a designated zone, an early step toward the idea of home. By controlling the sleeping environment, humans were beginning to control not just their days, but also their nights. Beyond function, these beds carried emotional value. After a day of dangerous hunting or endless cold, returning to a familiar resting place must have been reassuring. The smell of grass, the feel of fur, the familiar crackle of embers nearby, all signalled safety. In this sense, early beds provided psychological comfort as much as physical warmth. Thus, what began as simple piles of vegetation and hides slowly transformed into intentional layered bedding systems. They were not luxury by any measure, but they were steps toward one of humanity's oldest desires, to make rest a little more secure, a little more pleasant, and a little more human. The story of the first beds is not just about survival. It is about the gradual humanization of rest. These were not luxurious places to dream, yet in their rough layers of grass, fur, and stone, we see the earliest evidence of people seeking more than shelter. They were building comfort, tradition, and even ritual into their nights. In many cave sites, bedding areas appear repeatedly in the same places, generation after generation. This consistency suggests that beds were not temporary improvisations but fixed zones, sometimes maintained for decades. Families likely passed down knowledge about which plants were best for repelling insects, or how to arrange fur to maximize warmth. In this way, bedding became part of inherited wisdom, a form of culture carried silently across centuries. These early sleeping spaces also carried social weight. A family huddled together on a spread of furs was not just keeping warm, they were reinforcing kinship. The closeness of bodies in the night shaped bonds of trust. Children learned to feel safe under the same skins that protected their parents. Elders passed on tales beside the beds, turning sleep into part of the rhythm of storytelling and teaching. The bed, in its simplest form, became a stage for human connection. Archaeological evidence also hints that some bedding sites were carefully cleaned and renewed, suggesting a respect for the place of rest. Fires often burned near sleeping areas, their ashes sometimes deliberately spread beneath bedding layers to keep pests away. Such practices show a concern for purity, health, and continuity. Over time, these habits likely gave rise to rituals around sleep, whether in the form of placing a fire at the edge of a bedding circle or arranging hides in a specific order. There is also a symbolic dimension. To lie on grass and fur was to lie on nature itself, softened and domesticated by human hands. A bed was not simply the ground. It was a ground altered, tamed, and claimed. It represented the shift from living in the wilderness to shaping it into a home. In this sense, the first beds were among humanity's earliest cultural creations, no less significant than tools or fire. By the end of the Ice Age, these humble sleeping places had already sown the seeds of what we now consider normal: designated beds, communal sleeping, hygiene in rest, and the comfort of a familiar place to lay one's head. Every soft cushion, every mattress, every bed in history owes something to those first experiments with grass, fur, and stone. They remind us that the quest for better sleep is not new, it is as old as humanity itself. In the long, freezing nights of the Ice Age, fire was not a luxury, it was life itself. Without it, human survival in such hostile climates would have been almost impossible. Caves and shelters provided walls against the cold, but stone alone could not keep death away. It was fire that turned these dark hollows into homes, and its nightly presence shaped nearly every part of early human existence. Archaeological discoveries show that hearths, charred circles of stone and ash, were at the very centre of Ice Age dwellings. These were not placed randomly. They were deliberately built in the heart of caves, positioned where their heat would spread most effectively. Fire became the natural boundary of the night, pushing back the shadows and creating a zone of safety. In a world where predators prowled silently in the darkness, the crackle of flames was a shield, its light as warning that humans were awake, alert, and united. But fire's role was deeper than protection. It was warmth, the difference between life and death in a glacial climate. The human body, even huddled beneath layers of fur, could not withstand endless cold. The fire turned icy air into breathable comfort, allowing families to rest without the constant fear of freezing. Children could survive winters not because of caves alone, but because of the fires that glowed through the night. Even food and sleep were shaped by fire. The warmth of a hearth softened tough roots, roasted meat, and kept water from freezing, ensuring that families did not starve in the darkness. And when it was time to rest, the fire's glow offered more than light. It offered reassurance. To drift off beside a flickering flame was to fall asleep in the presence of a guardian, something living and watchful in the night. There is also evidence that fire changed the rhythm of human evenings. Before its discovery, darkness was absolute. Night was short, filled with fear and silence. With fire, the night stretched. People could gather, talk, share stories, and pass on knowledge while the flames burned. The hearth became a place not only of survival, but of culture, where memory and tradition were born. Thus, the role of fire in nightly survival was not singular, but layered. It was warmth, food, light, security, and community all bound into one. It was the centre of early human life, and without it, our ancestors might never have endured the endless winters of the Ice Age. To understand fire is to understand why humans not only survived the dark, but also began to thrive within it. For Ice Age humans, starting a fire was no simple task. Striking sparks from stone, coaxing flame from dry grass, or carrying embers from one camp to the next required skill and patience. Because of this difficulty, a nightly ritual formed around keeping the fire alive. Families did not simply let flames die when they slept. Instead, they banked the fire, carefully covering embers with ash or soil, so they would smoulder through the night, ready to awaken at dawn with a gentle breath and a few twigs. This responsibility was often shared among the group. In some cases, it may have been the role of older members, those who no longer hunted, to tend the hearth, ensuring that the fire did not fade. For others, the duty might have passed to those who rose easily during the night, checking the flames and adding fuel. The survival of all depended on this vigilance. To lose the fire in the depths of winter could mean hours of struggle to relight it, or worse, a night of deadly cold. The fire was not only practical but symbolic. To many early humans, flames were alive, a force with spirit and will. It could be fed, angered, or soothed. This sense of reverence shaped the way people treated it. Archaeologists have found evidence of hearths arranged with care, surrounded by stones that not only held heat, but gave the fire a kind of sacred boundary. To sit around the flame was to enter a circle of safety, and to tend it was to honour something greater than oneself. The nightly rituals around fire also created order. As the day ended, people would gather close, placing fuel, arranging sleeping spaces, and speaking softly while the flames danced. The crackling sound became as familiar as the beating of the heart, a rhythm of reassurance against the vast silence of the Ice Age night. Children would fall asleep to the glow of flames, their earliest memories shaped by this fiery presence. Even during travel, the importance of fire was remembered. Nomadic groups carried embers with them, tucked into bundles of bark or animal dung, smouldering gently until they reached a new place to rest. These glowing coals were lifelines, fragile, precious, and carefully protected. To carry fire was to carry survival itself. Thus, fire was never merely a tool. It was a companion, a responsibility, and a bond that united entire groups. The rituals of tending it, preserving it, and respecting it were nightly acts of survival, but also the beginnings of culture and belief. Around the hearth, humans did not simply endure the Ice Age, they built the foundations of community, memory, and meaning. The glow of fire at night did more than chase away the cold. It reshaped the very rhythms of human life. Before fire, darkness ruled. Once the sun sank behind the horizon, activities slowed, and people retreated into stillness. But with a hearth burning, the night stretched longer. Conversations could continue, tools could be repaired, food could be cooked, and stories could be shared. Fire did not only provide warmth, it gave time. This extension of day into night was revolutionary, altering the way humans used their energy and imagination. The fire also became a shield against the wilderness. Animals that prowled in the shadows, the wolves, lions, and bears of the Ice Age, kept their distance from flame. Its flickering light and unpredictable sparks made even the bravest predators hesitate. To sleep within reach of fire was to feel secure, a barrier between fragile human bodies and the dangers of the dark. For children especially, the fire was reassurance. Its presence meant protection. Its absence meant fear. Yet perhaps the most profound impact of fire was social. Around it, humans gathered not just for safety, but for connection. The circle of light became a stage for storytelling, for the sharing of memories, myths, and lessons. Here, elders passed down knowledge of hunts, migrations, and ancestors. Here, laughter rose and conflicts softened. Fire forged community as much as it forged warmth. Archaeologists suggest that this nightly gathering around flames may have been one of the first steps toward complex language, culture, and shared identity. Even sleep itself was shaped by fire. In its glow, people could rest more deeply, knowing that others kept watch by the flames. Its steady crackle was a lullaby of security, its warmth a cocoon against the frozen world. The hearth thus became the heart of nightly survival, a centre around which dreams could safely unfold. Over generations, fire seeped into myth and belief. Some early societies may have imagined it as a gift from the gods or a spirit to be revered. To lose it was a misfortune. To tend it was a sacred trust. The nightly survival of fire was not just practical but spiritual. It bound people to one another and to something larger than themselves. In the end, the role of fire went beyond survival. It changed the trajectory of humanity, giving warmth, light, safety, and meaning. Each night in the Ice Age, as flames flickered against cave walls and sparks rose into the dark, humans were not only fighting cold, they were building the foundation of civilization itself. When we think of hibernation, we imagine bears curling up in their dens, slowing their breathing, and retreating from the world until spring returns. This ability to shut down during the coldest, harshest months of the year is one of nature's most effective survival strategies. For animals, hibernation means avoiding starvation when food is scarce and enduring frigid temperatures without constant struggle. But what about humans? Could our Ice Age ancestors, faced with months of relentless winter, have practiced a kind of semi-hibernation? Archaeological discoveries suggest that this idea may not be as far-fetched as it sounds. In certain caves in Spain and Greece, scientists have studied skeletal remains dating back more than 400,000 years. The bones show unusual growth patterns and seasonal stress marks, almost as though the individual's bodies slowed down during the cold months, much like bears do. Instead of continuous growth, their skeletons reveal interruptions, pauses that might hint at periods of reduced metabolism and extended rest. This evidence has led some researchers to wonder if ancient humans truly spent winters in a kind of dormancy. The idea becomes more convincing when we consider the harsh realities of Ice Age winters. Food supplies dwindled. Hunting was often impossible beneath thick snow, and edible plants vanished. For survival, conserving energy was as vital as finding warmth. Semi-hibernation, or at least a pattern of greatly extended sleep, could have been nature's answer. By lowering activity, slowing metabolism, and retreating to caves padded with furs and grasses, humans may have weathered the winter months with minimal movement. But this was not hibernation in the full sense. Unlike bears, humans could not completely shut down their bodies without consequences. They still needed food, fire, and vigilance against predators. What may have happened instead was a balance. Long hours of drowsy rest broken by short periods of wakefulness, just enough to tend to the fire, check on children, or eat a small meal. In this way, the community might have entered a rhythm of survival, half asleep for much of winter, yet never fully withdrawn from the world. The theory of human semi-hibernation remains debated. Some scholars argue that the stress marks on bones could be due to malnutrition rather than intentional dormancy. Yet even if early people were not hibernators in the strict biological sense, their sleep patterns were undoubtedly shaped by winter's severity. The long darkness, limited food, and ever-present cold would have encouraged more rest, less activity, and a rhythm closer to hibernation than to modern life. The thought is striking. Our ancestors, wrapped in furs within the dim glow of fire, perhaps sleeping through most of the season as the world outside lay frozen. In their silence, they mirrored the animals of the wild, hibernating not completely but enough to carry them into spring. To imagine how semi-hibernation may have worked for early humans, we need to think beyond the familiar idea of long, cozy sleep. For people of the Ice Age, this was not about comfort but survival. In a world where winter could stretch for months with almost no food available, conserving energy became the most powerful weapon. The human body, adaptable and resourceful, may have entered a slower rhythm that resembled hibernation, though not as deep as that of animals. First, diet played a key role. During autumn, communities likely relied on fats and proteins, animal meat, marrow, and whatever nuts or seeds they could store. Fat reserves were essential because they provided slow-burning energy that the body could use even when meals became scarce. Just as bears fatten up before their winter slumber, humans may have eaten heavily in preparation for the lean months ahead. But unlike bears, they could not rely solely on stored fat. Instead, they balanced periods of near fasting with small amounts of preserved food, dried meat, roots, or stored grains where available. Second, their daily activity would have shifted drastically. Rather than hunting or gathering in the harsh snow, people may have spent most of their time curled in dark shelters, lying close together for warmth. Fires burned low to conserve fuel, and tasks were reduced to the bare minimum, keeping embers alive, repairing tools, or watching over children. With so little movement, their bodies would have required less energy, and long stretches of rest would have naturally followed. Some anthropologists suggest that this pattern may have resembled torpor, a state of partial hibernation seen in smaller animals, where metabolism slows, sleep lengthens, and physical activity nearly halts. The social structure of semi-hibernation is equally fascinating. Imagine families or entire clans retreating into caves or huts, wrapped in furs drifting between sleep and wakefulness. Nights and days blurred together as the sun barely appeared in the frozen sky. There may have been designated watchkeepers, individuals who took turns staying awake long enough to tend the fire or guard against predators. But even these watch periods would have been shorter, lighter, and less demanding than the routines of warmer seasons. Importantly, semi-hibernation would not have been a choice but a necessity. When snow blocked rivers and hunting grounds, energy could not be wasted. Survival meant waiting, conserving, and stretching out the meagre supplies. It was a season of endurance, a time when human resilience was measured not by action but by stillness. This quiet rhythm may even explain some of the stress marks found on ancient skeletons. Malnutrition? Yes. But also the result of long periods when the body slowed its growth, paused its normal cycles, and shifted into survival mode. To early humans, winter was not simply endured awake, but passed through in a state that blurred the boundary between sleep and waking life. What remains most intriguing about the theory of human semi-hibernation is how it echoes in our lives today. While we no longer curl up in caves for months on end, traces of this ancient rhythm may still linger within us. The human body, after all, is shaped by tens of thousands of years of adaptation. It does not forget so easily. Consider the way people often feel more tired in winter. Modern science calls it seasonal affective disorder, or links it to reduced sunlight exposure. Yet, long before such terms existed, humans may have instinctively slowed down in the colder months. The shorter days, longer nights, and reduced activity could be a faint memory of those ancient winters when slowing down was essential for survival. Our urge to sleep longer when it is cold outside may not be laziness at all, but a biological inheritance from Ice Age ancestors. Medical research offers curious hints. Some studies show that during prolonged food shortages, the human metabolism naturally slows, preserving energy. Others note that people deprived of light begin to shift their circadian rhythms, sleeping more and waking less. It is not the full deep hibernation of bears, but a quieter cousin, an echo of a time when such adaptations made the difference between life and death. Even cultural traditions carry traces of this seasonal rhythm. Many societies developed winter festivals not just as celebrations, but as ways to endure the long darkness with community and light. Storytelling by the fire, communal feasts, or midwinter rituals may all have been born from the same instinct, to mark time in the slow, suspended world of winter semi-hibernation. These gatherings gave people something to look forward to, breaking the monotony of endless rest and silence. The theory also reshapes how we view early human resilience. We often imagine survival as constant action, hunting, inventing, building. Yet perhaps one of humanity's greatest strengths was knowing when not to act. To sleep more, to burn fewer calories, to simply endure. This too was a form of survival. Stillness was not weakness, it was wisdom. And while we may never know for certain whether our Ice Age ancestors truly experienced semi-hibernation, the possibility invites us to rethink our own relationship with rest. The idea that humans once slept through much of winter, conserving energy as the snow piled high outside, is both humbling and strangely comforting. It suggests that rest, slowness, and silence are not enemies of survival, but its very foundation. In the end, the semi-hibernation theory is less about proving what exactly happened, and more about understanding what it meant to be human in the harshest of times. In the frozen darkness of ancient winters, survival may have depended not only on fire and food, but also on the deep, quiet wisdom of sleep. Long before the invention of clocks, alarms, or electric lamps, human sleep was guided entirely by the rising and setting of the sun. The great rhythm of nature, bright days and dark nights, dictated when people woke, worked, rested, and dreamed. In winter, when days shrank to only a few hours of pale light and nights stretched endlessly, people adapted their lives to these vast cycles of darkness. For Ice Age communities and later agricultural villages, survival depended on this natural rhythm. Without artificial light, evenings arrived quickly after sunset, plunging homes and camps into shadows. Work ceased, animals were secured, fires were lit, and people gradually settled into long stretches of rest. Sleep was not simply an act of recovery, it was a seasonal adaptation. In summer, with daylight stretching far into the evening, waking hours were longer. But in winter, humans often gave in to the deep pull of night, sleeping more than at any other time of year. This rhythm was reinforced by biology. The human body responds strongly to light, with melatonin, the hormone that guides sleep, rising in the absence of sun. In the endless nights of midwinter, people may have experienced a stronger urge to sleep, sometimes twice as long as in warmer seasons. Written records from the Middle Ages describe this as winter heaviness, a feeling of constant drowsiness and sluggishness when daylight was scarce. Today we might describe it as seasonal fatigue, but in the past it was simply part of life. The long nights also shaped culture and community. Winter became a season of quiet, of slowing down. Work in the fields stopped, journeys were fewer, and gatherings moved indoors. Sleep patterns stretched and shifted to fit these conditions. People might drift off soon after dusk, wake for a period in the night to tend fires, pray or talk quietly, and then return to bed until morning. This segmented sleep, first and second rest, was perfectly natural when the nights lasted 14 or 15 hours. Even the animals around them followed similar rhythms. Chickens roosted longer, livestock huddled in barns, and wild creatures vanished into burrows or slowed their movements. Humans too were part of this great winter hush. Their bodies, shaped by thousands of years of seasonal cycles, knew that winter meant rest. In this way, sleep was not a fixed habit, but a moving rhythm, expanding and contracting with the seasons. Longer nights meant longer rest, and survival itself was tied to this natural ebb and flow. The cycle of light and darkness became the clock by which all of life was measured, from the smallest insect to the earliest human communities. As winter nights stretched on, humans did not simply collapse into one long sleep. Instead, they adapted in ways that allowed survival while embracing the season's darkness. Anthropologists call this segmented sleep, a pattern in which people slept in two distinct phases, often separated by an hour or more of quiet wakefulness. During these nocturnal interludes, early humans might tend fires, check on children, craft tools, or even engage in conversation. This practice, perfectly attuned to the long nights of winter, balanced rest with the essential tasks of survival. Caves and shelters were often arranged to support this rhythm. Sleeping areas were positioned near hearths, so warmth could extend through both segments of rest. Furs and bedding layers were kept close at hand, and families clustered together to maintain body heat. In this environment, segmented sleep was not an inconvenience, it was a strategy. Rising briefly allowed humans to feed, move, or maintain fires without wasting precious energy, then drift back into warmth until dawn. Nighttime activities were quiet but purposeful. Children might be soothed, elders might share knowledge, and communal tasks continued under the soft glow of embers. Stories, songs, or myths could be passed from generation to generation during these hours. What modern society might consider idle time was, for early humans, an essential part of learning, bonding, and sustaining life through the long, cold months. Interestingly, these nocturnal patterns left traces in human biology and psychology. Modern research shows that segmented sleep aligns with natural cycles of melatonin and core body temperature. Early humans may have intuitively followed these rhythms, sleeping when the body naturally inclined toward rest and waking during lighter phases of slumber. In this sense, their winter sleep was both practical and physiologically natural, a finely tuned response to environmental conditions. Even social dynamics were influenced by long nights. Communities learned to respect the sleep of others, creating a rhythm of quiet periods and low activity. Those responsible for fire or safety rotated duties, ensuring that someone was awake at critical times while others rested. The long nights cultivated both patience and discipline, as the hours of darkness required careful management of energy, warmth, and attention. Thus, winter sleep was not merely a physical need. It was a cultural and survival strategy. The interplay between longer nights, shorter days, and segmented sleep created a rhythm that allowed humans to endure some of the harshest conditions on Earth. Far from idle or wasted, these hours of darkness were carefully navigated, blending rest, work, and social connection into a single, life-sustaining pattern. The seasonal rhythm of sleep did more than help humans survive. It subtly shaped culture, social structures, and even biology. Over generations, people internalized the pattern of long winter nights and short daylight hours, synchronizing daily routines with the environment. Work, rest, and leisure were all orchestrated around the cycle of light and darkness. In essence, humans became attuned not only to the seasons, but also to the demands of survival within them. Winter nights provided time for reflection and storytelling. During the brief wakeful periods between sleep segments, families and communities would gather around fires, exchanging knowledge, myths, and lessons learned from the day. These quiet hours became the breeding ground for oral traditions, embedding practical knowledge and cultural values in the minds of the young. In this way, the rhythm of sleep reinforced social cohesion and transmitted survival wisdom from one generation to the next. Biologically, this seasonal adaptation may have influenced human circadian rhythms. Our bodies evolved to respond to the length of day and night, adjusting sleep cycles accordingly. Long winter nights encouraged longer rest periods, helping conserve energy when food was scarce and conditions were harsh. These adaptations may still echo in modern humans, evident in the subtle changes in sleep patterns that occur during shorter, darker days. Seasonal fatigue, a desire to sleep more in winter, could be seen as a lingering trace of these ancient rhythms. The long nights also shaped practical survival strategies. Those awake between sleep segments could maintain fires, protect the group from predators, or perform small but essential tasks without overexerting themselves. In this way, humans balance rest with vigilance, preserving energy while remaining attuned to danger. The pattern of segmented sleep was not random. It was a sophisticated survival tactic honed over millennia. Perhaps most importantly, the rhythm of seasonal sleep reinforced a human understanding of time and patience. Life in the Ice Age demanded careful observation of natural cycles and an ability to align one's behaviour with them. Early humans learned that survival depended not only on action, but also on restraint, knowing when to rest, when to rise, and when to wait for better conditions. This quiet discipline was as crucial as hunting or crafting tools. By weaving sleep into the fabric of survival, humans transformed the long dark nights from a threat into an opportunity. They learned to rest strategically, to connect socially, and to honour the rhythms of the natural world. In doing so, they not only endured the harshest seasons, but also laid the foundations for cultural, social, and biological adaptations that continue to influence human life today. Sleep in the Stone Age was not merely a pause from survival, it was also a gateway to the unseen. Even without written language, early humans likely experienced vivid dreams, shaped by their daily struggles, the harsh environment, and the ever-present threats of predators and famine. In the flickering light of the fire, while the wind howled outside and snow piled against cave entrances, the mind wandered to a landscape both familiar and mysterious. Archaeologists and anthropologists studying prehistoric sites have long considered the role of dreams in early human culture. Cave art, for example, often depicts animals in unusual poses, abstract patterns, and scenes that do not match hunting reality. Some researchers suggest these images may have originated from visions experienced in dreams or trance-like states. Perhaps the bison, mammoth, or predatory cat on cave walls was not merely an object of hunting, but a reflection of night visions, symbolic, instructive, or even prophetic. Dreams may have served as both warning and guidance. A hunter dreaming of a wolf might interpret the vision as a caution to avoid certain areas or to remain vigilant at night. A dream of abundant game could signal good fortune, inspiring hope during harsh winters. In societies without written records, oral transmission of such dream experiences may have shaped communal decisions, blending survival with interpretation. The boundary between reality and vision was fluid. Dreams carried meaning because the world itself was uncertain and dangerous. Sleep, therefore, was never entirely private. Individuals may have shared their night visions with a group, narrating dreams by the fire or in the hushed darkness of shelters. Elders or shamans could interpret these visions, offering guidance on hunting, migration, or seasonal preparation. Dreams may have formed an early system of wisdom, an intangible map of experience and instinct, passed from one generation to the next through careful listening and observation. Physiologically, these night visions were likely influenced by the conditions of sleep itself. The cold, the hunger, the stress of predation, all could shape dream content. Just as modern science shows that extreme experiences leave impressions on dreams, Stone Age humans may have processed trauma, fear, and hope in sleep, finding meaning and even comfort in the nightly narratives created by their minds. The question remains tantalizing. How aware were early humans of their dreams? Did they consider them messages from spirits or ancestors, or simply reflections of daily anxieties? Whatever the interpretation, it is clear that sleep in the Stone Age was more than rest. It was a landscape where the mind explored, interpreted, and prepared for the challenges of the waking world. In the long nights of prehistoric winters, dreams may have carried more weight than we realize. While modern humans often dismiss dreams as fleeting images or random neural activity, early, humans lived in a world where interpretation could mean the difference between survival and danger. A dream was not simply private. It was potentially a source of guidance, a tool for anticipating threats, and a subtle form of communication across the group. Communities may have developed informal systems to interpret these visions. Elders or experienced hunters could listen to a dreamer's description and provide context based on observation and experience. For example, a vision of a river teeming with fish might encourage the group to hunt in that location, while a dream of predators lurking nearby could serve as a warning to stay close to fire or to avoid venturing into the forest. In this sense, dreams became a bridge between the subconscious and survival. an extension of practical knowledge shaped by instinct and necessity. The content of dreams likely reflected daily challenges, food scarcity, encounters with dangerous animals, or the struggle to maintain warmth may have appeared symbolically, distilled into images or stories within sleep. Anthropologists suggest that early humans may have used these nocturnal narratives to rehearse responses to threats, plan hunts, or process fears safely within the mind. Dreams became mental simulations, preparing the individual for real-world challenges in a controlled, low-risk environment. Sleep itself was structured to accommodate this reflective process. Segmented sleep patterns with periods of wakefulness in the middle of the night may have provided time to discuss, interpret, or act on visions. Fires flickered in the darkness, families huddled together, and children observed the ritual sharing of insights from dreams. These moments reinforced social bonds, encouraged learning, and allowed knowledge to circulate without the need for written records. Night became both rest and instruction, a subtle classroom under the cover of darkness. Moreover, dreams may have influenced ritual practices. Certain caves or shelters may have been designated spaces for dream interpretation or spiritual reflection. Artifacts such as carvings, pigments, or symbolic objects could have been inspired by night visions, merging the unseen world of sleep with the tangible world of daily life. Dreams, therefore, were not just ephemeral. They left traces in culture, shaping practices, stories, and even the physical environment. Through these patterns, we see that Stone Age humans were deeply attuned to their sleep. Dreams were not dismissed or ignored. They were observed, interpreted, and incorporated into daily life. In a world dominated by uncertainty, the visions experienced during rest offered both understanding and guidance, a rare form of insight in a harsh and unpredictable environment. The significance of dreams in the Stone Age extended beyond survival. They became a foundation for culture, spirituality, and shared human understanding. While we cannot know precisely what early humans believed, the evidence from cave art, symbolic artifacts, and patterns of sleep suggests that dreams were treated with reverence. These nightly visions may have offered insight into the unknown, bridging the tangible world with the unseen forces that shaped life. Dreams likely influenced early religious or spiritual practices. Certain patterns in cave art, repeated motifs, or abstract symbols could reflect images seen in dreams, interpreted as messages from ancestors, spirits, or the natural world. By sharing these visions with the group, early humans created a collective understanding of their environment, weaving dreams into community knowledge. This practice fostered cohesion and trust, as each member's insight, though intangible, became valuable for the survival and guidance of all. Beyond ritual, dreams may have contributed to human creativity and problem-solving. Imagining solutions during sleep, envisioning prey or escape routes, or processing social dynamics could have provided practical advantages. The mind, freed from immediate survival demands, could explore alternatives, rehearse strategies, and reinforce lessons learned during waking hours. In essence, sleep became an incubator for intelligence, foresight, and innovation. Psychologically, these dream practices may have shaped early humans' resilience. In a world of unpredictable winters, predators, and scarce resources, dreams allowed reflection, preparation, and emotional processing. Night visions offered a way to manage fear, imagine success, and maintain hope through the darkest months. They transformed sleep from passive rest into a vital extension of daily life, where cognition, culture, and survival intersected. Even today, echoes of this ancient relationship with dreams remain. Humans continue to assign meaning to night visions, create rituals around them, and share experiences through stories and art. Our fascination with dreams, interpreting, recording, and reflecting on them, may be a distant inheritance from these early practices. What began as a necessity for survival and understanding in the Stone Age has evolved into a window into human thought, imagination, and creativity. In the end, Stone Age dreams remind us that sleep was never just rest. It was a stage for reflection, learning, and connection. Within the flickering shadows of cave fires, humans not only survived the night, they glimpsed the unknown, interpreted its meaning, and wove the invisible threads of mind and spirit into the fabric of daily life. The night, once a threat, became a canvas for vision, memory, and wisdom. Sleep in the Stone Age was not merely a pause from survival. it was also a gateway to the unseen. Even without written language, early humans likely experienced vivid dreams, shaped by their daily struggles, the harsh environment, and the ever-present threats of predators and famine. In the flickering light of the fire, while the wind howled outside and snow piled against cave entrances, the mind wandered to a landscape both familiar and mysterious. Archaeologists and anthropologists studying prehistoric sites have long considered the role of dreams in early human culture. Cave art, for example, often depicts animals in unusual poses, abstract patterns, and scenes that do not match hunting reality. Some researchers suggest these images may have originated from visions experienced in dreams or trance-like states. Perhaps the bison, mammoth, or predatory cat on cave walls was not merely an object of hunting, but a reflection of night visions, symbolic, instructive, or even prophetic. Dreams may have served as both warning and guidance. A hunter dreaming of a wolf might interpret the vision as a caution to avoid certain areas or to remain vigilant at night. A dream of abundant game could signal good fortune, inspiring hope during harsh winters. In societies without written records, oral transmission of such dream experiences may have shaped communal decisions, blending survival with interpretation. The boundary between reality and vision was fluid. Dreams carried meaning because the world itself was uncertain and dangerous. Sleep, therefore, was never entirely private. Individuals may have shared their night visions with the group, narrating dreams by the fire or in the hushed darkness of shelters. Elders or shamans could interpret these visions, offering guidance on hunting, migration, or seasonal preparation. Dreams may have formed an early system of wisdom, an intangible map of experience and instinct, passed from one generation to the next through careful listening and observation. Physiologically, these night visions were likely influenced by the conditions of sleep itself. The cold, the hunger, the stress of predation, all could shape dream content. Just as modern science shows that extreme experiences leave impressions on dreams, Stone Age humans may have processed trauma, fear, and hope in sleep, finding meaning and even comfort in the nightly narratives created by their minds. The question remains tantalizing. How aware were early humans of their dreams? Did they consider them messages from spirits or ancestors, or simply reflections of daily anxieties? Whatever the interpretation, it is clear that sleep in the Stone Age was more than rest. It was a landscape where the mind explored, interpreted, and prepared for the challenges of the waking world. In the long nights of prehistoric winters, dreams may have carried more weight than we realize. While modern humans often dismiss dreams as fleeting images or random neural activity, early, humans lived in a world where interpretation could mean the difference between survival and danger. A dream was not simply private. It was potentially a source of guidance, a tool for anticipating threats, and a subtle form of communication across the group. Communities may have developed informal systems to interpret these visions. Elders or experienced hunters could listen to a dreamer's description and provide context based on observation and experience. For example, a vision of a river teeming with fish might encourage the group to hunt in that location, while a dream of predators lurking nearby could serve as a warning to stay close to fire or to avoid venturing into the forest. In this sense, dreams became a bridge between the subconscious and survival, an extension of practical knowledge shaped by instinct and necessity. The content of dreams likely reflected daily challenges: food scarcity, encounters with dangerous animals, or the struggle to maintain warmth may have appeared symbolically, distilled into images or stories within sleep. Anthropologists suggest that early humans may have used these nocturnal narratives to rehearse responses to threats, plan hunts, or process fears safely within the mind. Dreams became mental simulations, preparing the individual for real-world challenges in a controlled, low-risk environment. Sleep itself was structured to accommodate this reflective process. Segmented sleep patterns with periods of wakefulness in the middle of the night may have provided time to discuss, interpret, or act on visions. Fires flickered in the darkness, families huddled together, and children observed the ritual sharing of insights from dreams. These moments reinforced social bonds, encouraged learning, and allowed knowledge to circulate without the need for written records. Night became both rest and instruction, a subtle classroom under the cover of darkness. Moreover, dreams may have influenced ritual practices. Certain caves or shelters may have been designated spaces for dream interpretation or spiritual reflection. Artifacts such as carvings, pigments, or symbolic objects could have been inspired by night visions, merging the unseen world of sleep with the tangible world of daily life. Dreams, therefore, were not just ephemeral. They left traces in culture, shaping practices, stories, and even the physical environment. Through these patterns, we see that Stone Age humans were deeply attuned to their sleep. Dreams were not dismissed or ignored. They were observed, interpreted, and incorporated into daily life. In a world dominated by uncertainty, the visions experienced during rest offered both understanding and guidance, a rare form of insight in a harsh and unpredictable environment. The significance of dreams in the Stone Age extended beyond survival. They became a foundation for culture, spirituality, and shared human understanding. While we cannot know precisely what early humans believed, the evidence from cave art, symbolic artifacts, and patterns of sleep suggests that dreams were treated with reverence. These nightly visions may have offered insight into the unknown, bridging the tangible world with the unseen forces that shaped life. Dreams likely influenced early religious or spiritual practices. Certain patterns in cave art, repeated motifs, or abstract symbols could reflect images seen in dreams, interpreted as messages from ancestors, spirits, or the natural world. By sharing these visions with the group, early humans created a collective understanding of their environment, weaving dreams into community knowledge. This practice fostered cohesion and trust, as each member's insight, though intangible, became valuable for the survival and guidance of all. Beyond ritual, dreams may have contributed to human creativity and problem-solving. Imagining solutions during sleep, envisioning prey or escape routes, or processing social dynamics could have provided practical advantages. The mind, freed from immediate survival demands, could explore alternatives, rehearse strategies, and reinforce lessons learned during waking hours. In essence, sleep became an incubator for intelligence, foresight, and innovation. Psychologically, these dream practices may have shaped early humans' resilience. In a world of unpredictable winters, predators, and scarce resources, dreams allowed reflection, preparation, and emotional processing. Night visions offered a way to manage fear, imagine success, and maintain hope through the darkest months. They transformed sleep from passive rest into a vital extension of daily life, where cognition, culture, and survival intersected. Even today, echoes of this ancient relationship with dreams remain. Humans continue to assign meaning to night visions, create rituals around them, and share experiences through stories and art. Our fascination with dreams, interpreting, recording, and reflecting on them, may be a distant inheritance from these early practices. What began as a necessity for survival and understanding in the Stone Age has evolved into a window into human thought, imagination, and creativity. In the end, Stone Age dreams remind us that sleep was never just rest. It was a stage for reflection, learning, and connection. Within the flickering shadows of cave fires, humans not only survived the night, they glimpsed the unknown, interpreted its meaning, and wove the invisible threads of mind and spirit into the fabric of daily life. The night, once a threat, became a canvas for vision, memory, and wisdom. When we think of sleep today, it is often a matter of comfort, habit, or necessity for mental focus. For early humans, however, sleep was much more than a daily pause. It was a carefully managed strategy for survival. In the frozen expanse of Ice Age winters, every choice mattered. Energy was precious, warmth was fleeting, and food was scarce. To sleep wisely could mean the difference between life and death. Anthropologists studying prehistoric societies have found evidence that sleep patterns were closely linked to environmental conditions. Extended darkness, extreme cold, and limited resources shaped not only when people slept, but also how they organised rest within their communities. For example, people would cluster together in caves or shelters, using body heat and layered furs to conserve warmth. Firelight was tended continuously, creating a protected space where sleep could be deeper and safer. Sleep, therefore, was embedded in practical survival tactics rather than convenience. The concept of sleep as a survival tool also extended to timing. Early humans may have adjusted sleep cycles seasonally, rising only for essential tasks and conserving energy during prolonged periods of cold or scarcity. Hunting, gathering, or maintaining shelters was planned around rest, ensuring that individuals did not exhaust themselves before facing the next day. Even the simplest act, curling up near the warmth of a fire, was a calculated strategy to reduce energy expenditure while maximising safety. This approach to sleep was communal as well as individual. Segmented sleep patterns allowed for periods of vigilance during the night, with some members of the group awake to maintain the fire, watch for predators, or care for children. The rest of the group could sleep knowing that danger was monitored, creating a balance between survival needs and restorative rest. In this way, sleep was deeply intertwined with the rhythms of community life. Furthermore, sleep as a strategy was closely linked to diet and physical condition. During winters, when hunting was difficult, conserving energy became essential. Rest periods increased, movement decreased, and metabolic rates slowed. The human body naturally adjusted to these conditions, reinforcing the link between sleep and survival. Energy was stored for essential tasks and unnecessary exertion was avoided. Sleep was not idleness. It was an investment in life itself. Even the locations of sleep were chosen strategically. Shelters near water sources, caves with protective overhangs, or areas with natural windbreaks were preferred. Sleeping positions and arrangements, huddled together, layered with furs and facing away from cold drafts, were carefully considered. Every detail of sleep contributed to survival, reflecting a deep understanding of the environment and the body's needs. In this way, early humans transformed a seemingly passive state into an active survival strategy. Sleep was not a luxury. It was a critical adaptation to one of the harshest climates ever faced by humanity. Every night spent wisely increased the chances of enduring the frozen landscape and reaching another day, another season, and eventually another generation. Sleep in early human societies was not simply a biological need. It was an intricate tool for navigating a dangerous and unpredictable world. During long winters, communities relied on precise routines to balance rest with essential survival tasks. Extended periods of darkness demanded adaptation. Humans slept longer, but strategically, to conserve energy while maintaining readiness for sudden threats. One key strategy involved segmented sleep. Humans often divided their nightly rest into two distinct phases, with brief wakeful periods in between. These moments were used to tend fires, feed children, or observe the surroundings for predators. By rotating duties among members of the group, communities ensured that some individuals remained alert while others enjoyed restorative rest. In this way, sleep became a coordinated activity, maximizing safety without compromising the recuperative benefits of rest. Environmental awareness shaped these routines. Shelters were chosen for their insulation, protection from wind, and proximity to essential resources. Caves and overhangs provided natural warmth and security, while furs, grasses, and other soft materials created microenvironments conducive to deep sleep. Even the position of sleeping individuals mattered. Huddling together retained body heat, while those closest to the fire received extra warmth. Every element was a deliberate choice, turning sleep into a calculated survival strategy rather than a passive habit. Diet and seasonal preparation also influenced sleep. Before the onset of winter, early humans consumed calorie-rich foods, storing fat that could sustain them through times when hunting was minimal. During the coldest months, sleep helped reduce metabolic demands, conserving energy and maximizing the benefits of limited nourishment. In essence, sleep became a physiological adaptation. Longer rest meant more efficient energy use, enhancing the likelihood of survival during lean months. Sleep patterns were intertwined with social structures. Elders, hunters, and caretakers each assumed roles that influenced who slept when and for how long. The communal approach ensured that essential tasks, fire maintenance, protection, and childcare, were always covered. Nighttime was therefore not a passive period, but a carefully orchestrated balance of rest and vigilance. The safety of the group depended as much on these arrangements as it did on hunting or gathering skills. Even the mental benefits of sleep contributed to survival. Rest allowed the brain to process experiences, consolidate learning, and rehearse problem-solving. Dreams and night visions may have reinforced knowledge of the landscape, predator behavior, and social interactions. In this way, sleep was a mental as well as a physical survival strategy, a time when the mind prepared for the challenges of the coming day. Ultimately, sleep in Ice Age winters was an active adaptation. By combining careful timing, communal organisation, and environmental strategies, humans transformed rest into a survival tool. Each night was an investment in life itself, a calculated response to one of nature's harshest challenges. The way early humans approached sleep had far-reaching consequences beyond immediate survival. By treating rest as a strategic activity, they shaped not only their own lives, but also the trajectory of human evolution. Sleep became a means of conserving energy, maintaining alertness, and enhancing mental acuity, a foundation upon which communities could thrive despite the harshest climates. One of the most significant impacts was on social cohesion. Coordinated sleep schedules, segmented rest, and shared responsibilities fostered communication, trust, and mutual dependence. Those who watched fires or guarded the group during brief wakeful periods reinforced the bonds necessary for survival. The rhythms of rest and wakefulness became a form of social structure, shaping behaviour, hierarchy, and the distribution of duties within the group. Sleep was no longer merely individual, it was communal, a tool that strengthened the entire community. Sleep also influenced cognition and skill development. Rest allowed the brain to process complex experiences, consolidate knowledge, and rehearse potential challenges. Dreams and night visions, combined with quiet reflection during wakeful periods, may have supported early planning, problem-solving, and memory retention. In this way, sleep functioned as an invisible classroom, shaping learning and preparation for the dangers and opportunities of daily life. Furthermore, these sleep strategies had physiological benefits. By resting during periods of scarcity or extreme cold, humans conserved calories, reduced metabolic strain, and protected themselves from exhaustion. Over generations, populations that mastered the balance between energy conservation and alertness may have been more likely to survive, passing these traits down through both genetics and learned behaviour. Sleep became an evolutionary advantage as well as a practical necessity. Even culturally, sleep patterns influenced ritual and daily life. Segmented sleep allowed for periods of quiet observation, storytelling, or communal reflection. Nighttime became a space for passing knowledge, interpreting dreams, and strengthening social ties. These practices likely contributed to the formation of early traditions, folklore, and social norms, elements of human culture that persist in various forms today. In the end, viewing sleep as a survival strategy reminds us that rest is not merely passive. For early humans, it was an active, deliberate practice, integral to energy management, safety, social organisation, and learning. The simple act of lying down to sleep in the frozen darkness was a profound adaptation, a tool wielded with care and intelligence. The Ice Age may have tested humanity in every possible way, but it was through these quiet, calculated nights of sleep that humans endured, adapted, and laid the groundwork for all the centuries that followed. Even in our brightly lit, fast-paced modern world, the influence of ancient human sleep patterns quietly persists. While we no longer huddle in caves or cluster around a single fire for warmth, the rhythms established by our ancestors continue to shape the way our bodies and minds respond to rest. The long nights of Ice Age winters, the segmented sleep cycles, and the communal strategies for survival have left subtle traces in human physiology, psychology, and culture. Modern science confirms that sleep is not a uniform state. Like early humans, we naturally experience cycles of lighter and deeper sleep, punctuated by brief periods of wakefulness. This segmented rhythm, once a practical adaptation to long nights and survival needs, may still manifest in the middle of the night awakenings that many people experience. In a sense, we are still following a blueprint laid down tens of thousands of years ago, a design forged in a world where rest was as much about survival as it was about restoration. The human body also retains its sensitivity to light and dark, a legacy of life before artificial illumination. Short winter days can make us feel sluggish or sleepy, while long summer evenings inspire energy and activity. Seasonal shifts in sleep and alertness echo the ancient environmental cues that shaped behaviour for millennia. Even today, modern humans unconsciously respond to the same signals, adjusting sleep duration, energy expenditure, and mood according to the cycles of light and darkness. Social patterns too carry echoes of the past. Communal sleeping arrangements, quiet nighttime reflection and the natural coordination of rest and vigilance find subtle parallels in modern family and group behaviours. Although we no longer rotate night watches for fire maintenance or predator alertness, the instinct to coordinate schedules, protect others during sleep, and maintain shared routines can be traced back to survival strategies of early humans. Sleep, then, is not purely personal, it is historically social. Ancient practices also teach a lesson about balance. Early humans demonstrated that survival relied not solely on activity, but on knowing when to pause, conserve energy, and restore strength. In our modern obsession with productivity, this ancient wisdom reminds us that deliberate rest is essential. Sleep is not idleness, it is preparation, restoration, and sometimes even reflection. Ignoring this lesson may contribute to fatigue, stress, and reduced resilience, echoing the very dangers our ancestors faced when they failed to rest wisely. Finally, these echoes inspire curiosity about how we might reconnect with natural rhythms. Observing seasonal sleep changes, embracing periods of stillness, and recognizing the body's inherited tendencies can enhance well-being. By studying ancient patterns, we gain insight into the deep roots of human rest, understanding that sleep is not just a modern convenience, but a skill honed by survival over thousands of years. Even in our technologically driven world, the legacy of ancient sleep patterns subtly shapes modern life. Our bodies remain highly attuned to natural cycles, reflecting a deep evolutionary history in which rest was a strategic tool for survival. Shorter winter days, longer nights, and seasonal variations still influence energy levels, mood, and alertness, mirroring the rhythms that early humans relied upon for endurance in harsh climates. Modern research confirms that light exposure is critical for regulating sleep. Just as early humans used daylight to guide work and rest, our circadian rhythms remain synchronized with the sun. Insufficient exposure to natural light can disrupt sleep, weaken immune function, and affect cognitive performance. Conversely, aligning daily routines with natural light cycles can enhance alertness and overall well-being, echoing the survival strategies of our ancestors. Cultural practices also retain traces of ancient rhythms. Seasonal festivals, holidays, and communal gatherings often occur during the darkest months, reflecting the human need to gather, share, and maintain social bonds during periods of extended rest. These traditions may be modern echoes of the Stone Age practice of using long nights for storytelling, communal reflection, and the sharing of vital knowledge. In essence, cultural rituals around winter serve a function that goes beyond celebration. They continue the ancient interplay of rest, reflection, and social cohesion. Even personal sleep habits reveal ancestral influences. Many people experience segmented sleep or early morning awakenings, patterns that mirror the first and second sleep cycles of prehistoric humans. Nighttime routines, reading, meditating, or quietly reflecting before returning to sleep, can be seen as modern counterparts to the wakeful periods early humans used to tend fires, watch over children, or discuss communal concerns. These pauses are not disturbances but remnants of a deeply ingrained rhythm, reminding us that sleep is flexible and strategic, rather than a rigid single block. Health practices also benefit from acknowledging these ancient lessons. Extended periods of rest, napping, and mindful preparation for sleep can optimize energy conservation, cognitive function, and emotional regulation. Understanding sleep as a tool for survival, rather than a passive state, reframes how we approach rest, recovery, and daily performance. It encourages a rhythm that balances activity with intentional pauses, reflecting patterns honed over millennia. Ultimately, the echoes of Ice Age sleep reveal a profound truth. The way humans rest is deeply rooted in survival, adaptation, and social necessity. Modern life may be brighter, warmer, and safer than the frozen landscapes of our ancestors, but the ancient strategies of rest, timing, and reflection remain embedded in our biology and culture. Recognizing these patterns allows us to reconnect with a rhythm that has been essential for human resilience since the dawn of our species. The lessons of ancient sleep are surprisingly relevant, even in our modern, fast-paced world. Though we no longer face Ice Age temperatures or hunt for survival, the principles of rest, timing, and rhythm remain critical to human well-being. Early humans demonstrate that sleep was never merely passive. it was an essential strategy for conserving energy, maintaining alertness, and fostering social cohesion. Recognizing this allows us to approach modern sleep with intention rather than neglect. One enduring lesson is the value of alignment with natural cycles. Just as our ancestors relied on the sun to guide their activity, modern humans benefit from exposure to natural light and awareness of seasonal changes. Short winter days may prompt longer rest periods, while summer evenings can extend activity. By observing these patterns, we can synchronize our sleep and daily routines with biological cues, improving mood, focus, and physical health. In essence, modern circadian health is an echo of Ice Age survival strategy. Communal and social aspects of sleep are also relevant. While we may not huddle around a fire for warmth, family routines, shared sleep spaces, and social rituals around rest can enhance emotional security and well-being. Quiet evening activities, reading, reflection, or conversation, mirror the ancient practice of using wakeful moments to connect and share knowledge. Modern life may be solitary in sleep, but these social echoes remind us that rest is deeply interwoven with relationships and community. Another takeaway is the flexibility of sleep. Segmented patterns, short naps, and periods of reflection can be advantageous, echoing strategies that allowed early humans to maintain vigilance while still conserving energy. Recognizing that sleep does not need to be a rigid, uninterrupted block can reduce stress and enhance restorative benefits. Ancient humans show that responsiveness to environmental demands and internal needs was not a weakness, but a sophisticated survival tool. Finally, the ancient approach underscores sleep as an active, strategic practice. It was a time for restoration, planning, and reflection. Today, we can adopt the same perspective. Intentional rest supports not only physical health, but also emotional resilience, problem-solving, and creativity. By treating sleep as a tool rather than a passive state, we honour the evolutionary wisdom embedded in our biology and culture. In the end, echoes from the sleep patterns of early humans remind us that even in a modern artificial world, rest is vital, adaptable, and deeply intertwined with survival and well-being. By observing and learning from these ancient rhythms, we can reclaim a connection to the natural cycles that shaped human resilience and apply them to improve our modern lives.